Okay, so here we go with part two. Um, yeah. So recap real quick. I had I was actually serving in the church that I was in Fresno. Me and my ex-husband, we were a part of so many so many parts of the ministry. Like I was a Sunday school teacher. I was on the praise and worship team. I was an usher. I was an assistant. They put us over the the house for the uh it was like a group home for drug addicts and like a recovery home for drug addicts. Like we were young doing all of this, and we really didn't know what we were doing, but we were just trying to be obedient to what God or what the pastor was telling us that we should be doing. And we were on fire for the Lord, young, had two babies, and stuff just started. Well, it was being exposed over a long span of time, but you really don't want to see those things because it's just like, um, you know, it's not that you don't want to see it. It's just like we were young and naive, and we just didn't see it until it was just right there in our faces. Like, something is not right with how this is going down. So yeah, so I was going back and forth with my children's father, my ex-husband. Didn't really know what we wanted to do with our marriage. We were very young. Um, but yeah, God made the provision for me to move to Southern California. Me and my ex were separated at the time. And I was like, I knew, because I had told God, like, I'm not going back to church unless you move me to Southern California. And so he did. And like I said, within a week, I had went to this healing service, this Riverside Faith Temple Church in Riverside, California. Um, yeah, I love my family's church. I'm going to just say that. A real powerhouse, a very prophetic, anointed, faith-filled ministry. If you're in the Riverside area, go and check them out. Revival is in the air. But yes, I was at a healing service, and Apostle Beatrice Sims, my auntie, she was speaking. And some things I understood because I had been a part of the ministry. I had served, I was, but I really didn't have that personal, intimate relationship with God. I knew I loved him. I knew I wanted to do everything possible and in my power to, be live right, and I knew I wanted to raise my children in the church and all these things. I knew that, and I saw a lot and I experienced a lot, but I really wasn't really tapping into my Bible the way that I should have been, and I really wasn't having that deeper connection, because I was really busy serving. Servitude was like really high there. I was serving more than I was having my own personal relationship with God. So yeah, so I understood some of the things that she was saying about praying to the four corners and lifting your hands in worship. She said, okay, so now we're going to begin to pray. If you have your heavenly language, start praying in your heavenly language. I was like, well, I can lift my hands and I could pray, but I don't have my heavenly language. And then right after I said that, she was like, if you don't have your heavenly language, ask him for it. I was like, cool, simple enough. So I started asking God for it. And I was like, Lord, please would you Whew. It's like now knowing more about the word, it's like I really had my own day of Pentecost all by myself. It was so powerful, and it just fell on me. And it was like, God, it was like open communication with God. It's like, because I had been praying, I had my own relationship with God, but I wasn't ever, like, I wasn't sure if he was hearing me, especially after I left my church at Fresno. I was like, I'm not living right. I'm not, like, I had got my little touch of freedom, and I was just like, no, I'm wilding because this didn't work. So I definitely was, carrying a lot of shame. I was carrying a lot of, like I said, self-condemnation. I wasn't sure if God was really hearing me anymore. I knew that he told me to go out there. I knew, it wasn't completely gone. I was still hearing God's voice, but on this level, no, man, it was a whole new experience. And he just fell on me, and I just could not stop speaking in tongues. I felt like he was pulling out all these things. And I was like talking, I was like feeling like, like you've been mute for so long, like your words were there, but nobody could hear you. You were drowning. I was drowning, and nobody could hear me. And then finally, it felt like God could hear me, and he was pulling me up out of that place, out of that darkness, out of that pit, out of that, place where I just felt so suffocated. And I went in, and I couldn't stop. I really couldn't stop. Like, I had heard tongues before in Fresno. I had heard, but a lot of people's tongues kind of sounded the same, and I really didn't know or understand what it was. I had no understanding of what heavenly language was, the day of Pentecost, the being baptized. I wasn't, I was too busy serving. I wasn't sitting and listening. I wasn't, I was taking notes, but I really wasn't studying for myself. So, yeah, when that happened, I knew God had brought me there for a purpose. And my tongue didn't sound like anybody else's. And I was like continuously like talking and crying out to the Lord. And you know how like after the service is almost done, and they're like, did you, receive the gift of speaking in tongues? And, they ask you to like pretty much tell what you experienced. And I started talking, and I just like, I could not speak in English. Like, I tried to for a little bit, and then it just kept coming. And one of the mothers there was like, I was grabbing her to, cover me. And she said it felt like electricity shot through my body. So I knew, that the power of God was heavy on me and in me. And it just opened my eyes to a whole nother experience. Like, I really, truly received my salvation that day. And of course, that was 2012. There's chapters, there's levels to this. But that was my personal experience. And it was crazy because my cousin Keita, which is my prayer partner, that's my built-in bestie. Like, God knew to make us cousins and prayer partners, like, for real. And she was there, and she was like, happy for me. I could not stop speaking in tongues for hours. Like, she even drove me around the church just so I can like really get it all out. And even that night, like, I was testing it, like, Lord, Like, is it still there? Like, I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to lose the gift that God had gave me.